Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Relax and close your eyes as you listen to the story of what shattered the Primordial Night's timeline. In the infinite expanse of possibility, every choice creates a divergence. Every decision births a new reality. When Queen Marika shattered the Elden Ring, the cosmos itself fractured along with it. In one timeline, grace returned to guide the Tarnished back to the lands between. In another timeline, something far more terrible arrived instead. The Primordial Night descended like a shroud over the world. Eternal darkness swallowed the golden light of the Erd Tree. Monstrous beings crawled forth from rifts between realities. The gods abandoned their thrones, leaving only ruin and despair in their wake. This alternate timeline exists parallel to the one we know, a mirror reflection warped by catastrophe into something almost unrecognizable. Elden Ring Nightreign takes us to this broken world, to a place called Limveld, where the night has reigned supreme for untold ages. Here, the familiar geography of Limgrave has eroded into something alien and hostile. Coastal cliffs now plunge into churning seas. Underground tunnels wind through bedrock that never existed before. The Erd Tree that once towered over the landscape is nowhere to be seen, its golden presence replaced by an oppressive absence that weighs on the soul. This alternate reality branches from the same shattering that set the original Elden Ring story into motion. Director Junya Ishizaki confirmed that Nightreign takes place in a world completely separate and parallel to Elden Ring, with the shattering being the only major event the two timelines share. Everything that happens after that cataclysmic moment diverges, where one path leads to the return of the Tarnished and the possibility of restoration, the other plunges into darkness without reprieve. The Primordial Night is not simply the absence of light. It represents something far more fundamental, an outer god of darkness that has existed since time immemorial. The Nox of the Eternal Cities once worshipped this deity, awaiting their prophesied Lord of Night, who would usher in the Age of Stars. In this timeline, a Lord of Darkness has indeed risen, though whether this represents the fulfillment of the Nox's prophecy or something far more twisted remains open to interpretation. The Lord who came brought not prosperity, but devastation, transforming the entire world into an eternal nightmare from which there seems to be no waking. 8 powerful beings known as Nightlords now rule over different regions of this corrupted reality. These entities wield tremendous power drawn from the night itself, commanding legions of monsters and warping the landscape to suit their dark purposes. At their head stands Heolstor, the Primordial Nightlord, the one who heralded the night's arrival and continues to maintain its grip on this dying world. Against this overwhelming darkness, a desperate resistance has formed at the Roundtable Hold. 8 warriors called Nightfarers have been summoned from across time and space to face these lords of shadow. They arrive with fragmented memories, knowing only that they must fight. Each expedition into Limveld is a race against time as the night's tide encroaches, forcing confrontations with horrors both familiar and utterly alien. The fate of this entire timeline rests on their shoulders. But what caused this divergence? What moment, what decision, what cosmic accident led to the night's triumph instead of the Tarnished's return? The answers lie buried in item descriptions, hidden in character remembrances, whispered by the few who still remember what came before. To understand the Primordial Night, we must trace the threads of this alternate history back to their source, examining every clue that might reveal how and why this timeline shattered. Some secrets speak of a mysterious cutting-gifted tribe who foresaw the night's coming and tried desperately to prevent it. Their attempts to cheat a god and glimpse the Erd Tree's most guarded sin resulted in terrible punishment. Other fragments hint at Heolstor's true identity, suggesting he may be more than simply a malevolent force of destruction. The connection between his distinctive Dark Moon Greatsword and certain other figures from Elden Ring's mythology raises tantalizing questions about who he once was before the night claimed him. The story of Nightreign is one told through fragments and implications rather than direct exposition. Like all From Software narratives, it requires piecing together disparate clues into a coherent whole. The journey of each Nightfarer reveals crucial information about what happened to this world. The nature of the Nightlords themselves provides insight into the structure of this corrupted reality. The very geography of Limveld bears witness to the catastrophic changes wrought by the Night's reign. This is a world where the Golden Order failed completely, where Marika's religion has been all but forgotten except in a few churches still standing, where the people no longer pray to anyone, having been abandoned by every deity they once revered. The sites of grace that once shone with golden light have become silver pools of gloom. The Erd Tree's absence is perhaps the most profound change of all, that towering symbol of divine authority simply gone, leaving only memory and longing. Yet even in this darkness, resistance persists. The Nightfarers push back against the encroaching night with every expedition. The Roundtable Hold, though dilapidated and weathered, still stands as a beacon of defiance. The possibility of dawn remains, however faint. This timeline need not end in perpetual shadow. Through understanding what went wrong, perhaps we can glimpse what must go right to restore light to this broken world. The Primordial Night challenges everything we thought we understood about the Elden Ring universe. It presents alternate outcomes for familiar characters and events. It introduces cosmic forces that may have always lurked in the background of the main timeline, but never gained sufficient power to manifest. It shows us what the world becomes when the Tarnished never returns, when grace never guides anyone home, when the Elden Ring remains shattered indefinitely, with no one to restore it. The shattering marked the beginning of the end for the Golden Order. When Queen Marika struck the Elden Ring with her hammer and shattered it into fragments, she set into motion events that would reshape reality itself. In the original Elden Ring timeline, this catastrophic act led to war among the demigods as they fought over the Great Runes. The lands between fell into chaos, but grace eventually returned to the Tarnished, calling them back from exile to compete for the title of Elden Lord and potentially restore order. Nightreign shows us what happens when that call never comes, when the Tarnished remain beyond the fog, never receiving their summons, when grace does not return to guide champions toward restoration. In this timeline, the shattering creates a power vacuum that something far more ancient and terrible rushes to fill. The night, that primordial darkness worshipped by the Nox, seizes the opportunity presented by this moment of cosmic disorder. The exact mechanism of this divergence remains unclear, shrouded in the same mystery that surrounds so much of From Software's narrative design. We know the shattering occurs in both timelines. We know that after this event, the paths split decisively. What we do not know with certainty is what specific factors caused one timeline to receive the Tarnished's return, while the other received the Night's arrival instead. One prevailing theory within the community suggests the divergence relates to decisions made by major players in the immediate aftermath of the shattering. In this interpretation, certain demigods might have made different choices. Ranni's plans could have succeeded more completely, allowing her Age of Stars to manifest in a corrupted form. Another possibility focuses on Radahn. Perhaps in this timeline, he was never there to hold back the stars, enabling cosmic forces to intervene in ways they could not in the main timeline. The potential absence of Radahn, the Star Scourge, looms large in discussions of Nightreign's timeline. In the original Elden Ring, Radahn's gravity magic holds the very stars in place. preventing fate itself from moving forward. His continued existence, even in his mindless, scarlet rot-addled state, maintains this cosmic stasis. Based on this understanding, if Radon fell earlier in Nightraign's timeline, or if he never gained that power to begin with, the stars would move freely. The night, associated intrinsically with stars and fate, could then descend unopposed. However, this remains interpretive speculation rather than confirmed lore. The connection to the Nox and their prophecies cannot be ignored. The eternal cities, buried beneath the earth as punishment for their heresy against the greater will, awaited their Lord of Night, who would herald the age of stars. These underground civilizations worshipped darkness and practiced forbidden sorceries related to night and fate. Their entire culture was built around anticipation of this figure who would guide them to prosperity. In Nightraign's timeline, this prophecy finds fulfillment, though in the cruelest possible way. Heolstor the Nightlord emerges as this prophesied figure. He arrives after the shattering and curses the world, covering it in the eternal night. Rain pours from the sky continuously, threatening to wash away the very history of the land. The night's tide, that encroaching wall of violet flames and darkness, spreads across Limveld, driven by his power. He becomes everything the Nox hoped for and everything they should have feared, bringing an age of stars, but one devoid of hope or redemption. The nature of grace in this timeline reveals much about what changed. In Elden Ring, grace manifests as golden guidance that literally shows Tarnished where to go. It is the greater will's method of directing chosen champions toward specific goals. The absence of this guidance in Nightraign suggests the greater will either withdrew entirely from this timeline or lost its ability to influence events. Without the greater will's intervention, other cosmic forces gained ascendancy. The Erdtree's disappearance represents another crucial change. In the main timeline, despite the shattering and subsequent chaos, the Erdtree remains a massive, visible presence dominating the skyline of the lands between. It may be sealed or burning depending on the player's progress, but it never simply vanishes. In Nightraign's Limveld, the Erdtree is utterly absent. Only old paintings and the fading memories of individuals like the Executor preserve any record of its existence. This absence carries profound implications. The Erdtree was not merely a geographical landmark, but the literal vessel of the Elden Ring, the physical manifestation of the Golden Order's power. Its disappearance suggests the Golden Order's complete collapse in this timeline. Marika's religion has been abandoned. People no longer pray to her or the Elden Ring. The entire theological and political structure that defined civilization in the lands between has crumbled into dust. The cutting-gifted tribe plays a crucial but mysterious role in these events. According to the Primordial Nightlord's rune description, this group anticipated the night's coming and spent considerable time planning how to prevent it. They concluded their only chance was to cheat a god. They glimpsed something they should not have, the very sin of the Erdtree itself, and for this trespass they were punished. The exact nature of this punishment and whether it contributed to the timeline's dark trajectory remains unknown. Who were the cutting-gifted tribe? The name itself invites speculation. Some theorize cutting-gifted refers to those who received cuttings of the Erdtree, perhaps to plant elsewhere. Others suggest it connects to the Fingerslayer blade, that weapon of the Nox capable of cutting through the flesh of outer gods. The term might even be a translation issue, with the original Japanese implying something closer to grafting, or another concept entirely. Their connection to the Nox seems probable given their awareness of the coming night and their attempts to prevent it. If they were Nox, or at least allied with them, they would have understood the prophecies and cosmic forces at play. Their ritual to summon the Nightfarers demonstrates advanced metaphysical knowledge. they summoned not just bodies, but minds from across vast distances in time and space, pulling descendants to the Roundtable Hold to fight battles their ancestors could not win. This summoning ritual itself may have been part of their attempt to cheat a god. If they knew the night would come, they arranged for future warriors to resist it. They glimpsed the sin of the Erd Tree, some fundamental flaw or deception at the heart of the Golden Order, and tried to use this knowledge to subvert cosmic destiny. Their punishment suggests they failed, but their preparations were not entirely in vain. The Nightfarers they summoned continue to fight even after the tribe's own destruction. The relationship between the night and death provides another angle for understanding the timeline split. In Elden Ring's main timeline, death was removed from the Golden Order by Marika, creating a world where people could live indefinitely unless killed by violence. The Rune of Death, held by Maliketh, became the only true means of permanent death. In Nightraign's timeline, the night is explicitly associated with death through bones bearing distinct lifelessness and connections to the outer god of death itself. Perhaps in this timeline, death returned to the world in a more complete and terrible way. The night brings not just darkness, but the finality of endings, of civilizations collapsing never to rise again. The relentless rain that erodes Limveld threatens to wash away history itself, ensuring even memory of what came before will eventually dissolve. This is death on a cosmic scale, the death of hope and possibility rather than merely individual mortality. The timeline fracture may also relate to the fate of specific demigods. Each of Marika's children held a great rune after the Shattering, their conflicts driving much of Elden Ring's plot. If these demigods met different ends in Nightraign's timeline, the entire power structure would shift. Perhaps Malenia succumbed entirely to the Scarlet Rot, or Mog successfully established his own dynasty in opposition to the Golden Order, or Miquella never achieved whatever aims he pursued in the Land of Shadow. The absence of information about these figures in Nightraign is telling. We hear nothing of Godric, Renala, Ricard, or the other major players from the main game. This silence suggests either they perished before becoming significant, or the timeline diverged early enough that some never rose to prominence at all. The world of Nightraign has been so thoroughly transformed that the demigod's squabbles seem irrelevant compared to the existential threat of the eternal night. One theory circulating through the community suggests that Ranni's ending, the Age of Stars, may have manifested in corrupted form in this timeline. Ranni sought to usher in an age without gods, where the Order would be swept away on a voyage through the stars. Her Dark Moon Greatsword, gifted to her consort, symbolizes this new age. Heolstor wields what appears to be a similar weapon, leading some to speculate whether he could be Ranni's consort, transformed by the night into something monstrous. This interpretation would suggest her attempt to free the world from divine influence inadvertently opened the door for an even worse force to enter. This theory draws connections from several visual and thematic elements. Heolstor's blade channels not the freezing power of carrion moons, but the abyssal power of his night. His existence as Nameless, a lord of darkness carrying a moonlight sword, creates parallels with Ranni's symbolism while inverting it into something sinister. If we interpret this timeline as representing what happens when the Age of Stars succeeds but goes catastrophically wrong, it would explain why the night reigns supreme and the gods have vanished. However, this remains scholarly speculation rather than confirmed lore. The Greater Will's apparent absence or impotence in this timeline remains one of its most striking features. In the original Elden Ring, the Greater Will remains an active, if distant, force. Its vassals like the Elden Beast and Meter continue to function. The two fingers still attempt to provide guidance, however flawed. In Nightraign, we see no evidence of the Greater Will's continued involvement. The outer god of night has seemingly replaced it entirely, suggesting either the greater will withdrew or was driven out by this competing cosmic power. This raises disturbing questions about the nature of the greater will and its control over the lands between. If a single divergent timeline allowed a different outer god to gain dominance, how secure was the Golden Order ever truly? The cutting-gifted tribe glimpsed the sin of the Erd Tree, some fundamental flaw in Marika's system. Perhaps this sin was the greater will's own vulnerability, its inability to maintain control without constant reinforcement through chosen champions and careful manipulation of fate. The procedural, shifting nature of Limveld itself may reflect the timeline's instability. Unlike the static lands between of the main game, Limveld changes every time it is visited. Shifting Earth events drastically alter geography. Key locations appear in different configurations. The Night's Tide forces constant movement and adaptation. This fluidity suggests a world not firmly anchored in reality, a timeline that has not fully stabilized into a single definite form. Some areas of Limveld show influences from multiple regions of the original lands between. Scarlet Rot corruption appears where it should not. Lava flows emerge in impossible locations. Ancient ruins from Farum Azula materialize without explanation. These geographical impossibilities hint that the Night's influence has broken down the normal barriers, separating different areas and perhaps different times. Reality itself has become malleable in ways that should not be possible in a properly ordered cosmos. The appearance of bosses from Dark Souls further complicates our understanding of the timeline fracture. The Centipede Demon, Nameless King, and Duke's Dear Freya should not exist in Elden Ring's universe at all. Yet Heolstor can summon these beings from other worlds, drawing them through rifts in reality to serve the Knight's purposes. This suggests the timeline split did not merely change what happened in the lands between, but also weakened the fundamental structure of reality itself, allowing bleeding between worlds that should remain forever separate. Whether this represents asset reuse for gameplay purposes or genuine lore implications remains debated among the community. Director Ishizaki received permission from other From Software directors to use these bosses, suggesting at least some intentionality behind their inclusion. If they are truly meant to be the actual entities from Dark Souls rather than mere visual references, the implications are staggering. It would mean From Software has been building toward a shared multiverse all along, with Elden Ring and Dark Souls existing in the same broader reality, separated only by dimensional barriers that the Nightlords can breach. At the heart of the Primordial Night stands a figure both tragic and terrible. Heolstor the Nightlord, known also as the Shape of Night, the Night Aspect, and the Primordial Nightlord himself, serves as both the herald and the embodiment of eternal darkness. His existence raises more questions than answers, challenging players to piece together his true nature from scattered clues and visual symbolism. The first encounter with Heolstor comes as the Shape of Night. This initial form appears hunched and broken, covered in tattered gray rags inscribed with golden runic scripture. The figure seems less like a coherent being and more like a hollow shell, something that once possessed identity and purpose, but has been worn away by time and darkness. Two of his arms are bound to his body, the left impaled by his own dagger, the extra arm with a greatsword's pommel driven through its palm. This imagery of self-inflicted restraint suggests someone trying desperately to contain something within themselves, a struggle against internal corruption. When the Shape of Night falls, thick black miasma pours from the body. The Nightfarers find themselves transported to another space entirely, pulled into a realm of pure darkness where the true Heolstor awaits. Here his form transforms completely. The hunched wretch becomes an upright figure, clad in hollow silver armor with a purple cape. The Primordial Nightlord's rune can be seen wrapped around his abdomen, pulsing with dark power. His left hand, curiously, wears no armor at all, appearing as silver skin adorned with a bracelet and ring, as though some trace of humanity still clings to this one uncovered part. The greatsword he wields demands immediate attention from anyone familiar with From Software's games. The blade's silhouette, its glowing blue luminescence, the sweeping weapon arts it enables, all these characteristics mark it unmistakably as the latest iteration of the iconic Moonlight Greatsword. This legendary weapon appears in some form across nearly every From Software title, often representing the pinnacle of magic-based combat. In Elden Ring's main game, it exists as the Dark Moon Greatsword, bestowed by Ranni upon her consort as a symbol of their bond and her full moon sigil. Heolstor's version, however, channels not lunar ice, but abyssal darkness. The blade does not freeze enemies, but drowns them in night. This inversion of the weapon's usual properties suggests either a corruption of the original or an entirely separate artifact that merely resembles the Carrion Moonlight blade. Lore descriptions specifically note this is his original sword, not a Carrion blade at all, implying the Moonlight Greatsword may have existed long before Ranni or the Carrion royal family claimed it for themselves. The visual similarities between Heolstor's weapon and Ranni's Dark Moon Greatsword have sparked considerable community discussion. In the main timeline, Ranni seeks to usher in an age of stars, removing divine influence from the world and ascending to godhood through the Dark Moon. She bestows the Dark Moon Greatsword upon her consort as a symbol of their union. Finding a Lord of Darkness wielding a similar moonlight blade in Nightreign's timeline has led to theories about possible connections, though these interpretations remain unconfirmed by explicit lore. What we know for certain about Heolstor comes from the relic he drops, the Night of the Lord. Its description reveals, "The country lay in ruin. The man who once was knight had challenged the hero, but he too was no match. He fell, just another body in a great pile, but eventually he awoke, crawling out from underneath the others. Though he had failed to protect anything or anyone, he yet lived. And so he cursed the world. It was the dead of night, and from the sky poured down a great rain." This backstory tells us Heolstor was once a knight who fought and died, only to awaken among the corpses of the fallen. His curse upon the world followed his resurrection, bringing the Primordial Night's reign. Whether this knight has any connection to the Tarnished, to Ranni's potential consort, or represents someone entirely different, remains open to interpretation. Heolstor is described as a patchwork of champions, a phrase that invites multiple interpretations. This could mean he is literally composed of multiple warriors fused together, a gestalt entity formed from many would-be heroes. Alternatively, it might indicate he possesses the abilities and characteristics of numerous champions, perhaps drawing power from every warrior who ever attempted to become a lord in various timeline iterations across the multiverse. His moveset certainly demonstrates proficiency with techniques that span the full range of combat styles seen throughout Elden Ring, which could support either reading of this description. The name Heolstor itself proves interesting. In Japanese, he is called simply Nameless, stripped of individual identity as though his original name has been erased or forgotten. The fact that From Software chose to give him the name Heolstor in English suggests meaning behind the choice, but the exact etymology remains unclear. Some players have noted its similarity to Helios, the Greek word for sun, which would be bitterly ironic for a being who ended the sun's reign and established eternal night. His role as enemy to the world appears in his lore, marking him as fundamentally opposed to existence itself. The night he brings is not simply darkness, but negation. the erasure of everything the Golden Order built and everything that came before it. His undying hatred for all things drives him forward, even when his rational mind has long since been consumed. This description paints him as a figure trapped in his own nightmare, compelled to perpetuate the darkness by forces beyond his control. During the battle against Heolstor, he demonstrates the ability to cleave open rifts in the sky. These rifts reveal the skyboxes of other Nightlords' arenas, and drawing power from them imbues his weapon with corresponding elemental affinities. This capacity to connect with and channel the power of other Nightlords establishes him as their superior, perhaps even their creator, or the source from which they all emerged. Each Nightlord may represent a different aspect of the night, fragments of Heolstor's own nature given independent form. The lore found in his relic paints a picture of catastrophe following his reawakening. A country lay in ruin, presumably the lands between after the shattering. At some point after waking, Heolstor cursed the world. From the sky poured great rain, that ceaseless downpour which continues to scour Limveld and threaten the erasure of history itself. This curse transformed the entire realm, bringing the night's tide and all the horrors that accompany eternal darkness. What caused his reawakening? What slept, and when did it wake? These questions have no clear answers in the current lore. Perhaps after the shattering, some ritual or natural process restored him to consciousness. Perhaps the cutting-gifted tribe's attempts to prevent the night accidentally triggered the conditions for his return. Perhaps his awakening was inevitable once certain cosmic dominoes fell, and the timeline merely represents the universe where nothing prevented those dominoes from toppling. The connection to Ranni's ending in the main game becomes even more relevant when examining the aftermath of Heolstor's curse. Ranni speaks of the chill night that encompasses all when describing her vision. She promises to take the Order into the cosmos on a voyage lasting 1,000 years. The night Heolstor brings could be seen as a dark reflection of this promise, the chill night made literal and perpetual rather than a metaphorical age of freedom from divine oppression. Some players have drawn parallels between Heolstor and Dark Souls 3's Soul of Cinder, the final boss representing an amalgamation of everyone who ever linked the First Flame. That entity drew upon the abilities and fighting styles of countless champions across ages. Heolstor's description as a patchwork of champions suggests similar mechanics at play, as though he has absorbed or been constructed from the essence of multiple warriors. If he truly is Ranni's consort in this timeline, he might contain aspects of every tarnished who could have served that role across infinite possibility. His second phase introduces even more devastating attacks and demonstrates greater control over the knight's power. Teleportation allows him to appear instantly beside distant opponents, punishing those who try to maintain safe range. Area of effect strikes and long-range projectiles make him dangerous at every distance. The enchantment on his blade grows stronger, the dark blue glow intensifying as the fight progresses. Players who survive long enough to deplete his health significantly witness him ascend into the sky itself, slicing open reality to draw power from other Nightlords and imbue his broken sword with their elemental might. That broken sword deserves specific mention. In addition to his intact Moonlight Greatsword, Heolstor wields a second blade in his right hand that has been shattered. This weapon, despite its damaged state, serves as an effective conduit for the knight's power. The symbolism of wielding both a whole blade and a broken one suggests duality, the memory of what he once was alongside the corruption of what he has become. The broken sword might represent his original identity, shattered beyond repair, while the Moonlight Blade represents the knight's transformation of him into something new and terrible. The fact that holy damage proves particularly effective against Heolstor provides an interesting counterpoint to his nature. Most beings associated with darkness or outer gods in Elden Ring demonstrate resistance to holy power, or at least neutrality toward it. Heolstor's vulnerability suggests the night, despite its cosmic origin, remains antithetical to the divine forces that once ruled the lands between. This weakness to holy damage may be the only remaining vulnerability from his previous existence, a crack in the knight's armor that skilled Nightfarers can exploit. His parryable attacks present another unusual characteristic. Most major bosses in From Software games cannot be parried at all, or can only be parried during specific attacks or phases. Heolstor can be consistently parried throughout the fight, requiring 3 successful parries to open him for a critical attack. This mechanic reinforces the sense that beneath the knight's corruption, he remains fundamentally human, still bound by certain limitations that pure outer god manifestations would not share. The visual design of his armor and clothing deserves analysis as well. The hollow silver suggests absence rather than presence, a shell containing darkness rather than flesh and bone. The purple cape evokes royalty and might deliberately echo Ranni's own aesthetic, as purple and dark blue form key parts of her visual identity. That single bare hand with its jewelry could represent the last trace of his mortality, the only part the knight could not completely consume or transform. When defeated, Heolstor drops the Primordial Nightlord's rune. This item has the properties of a great rune, though it explicitly is not one of the actual great runes created when Marika shattered the Elden Ring. Instead, it represents something older, perhaps predating the Elden Ring itself. The cutting-gifted tribe believed this rune enabled the knight's arrival, embedding it within Heolstor to grant him power over darkness. Whether he always possessed this rune, or whether it was forced upon him, remains unclear, but its presence within him marks him as the keystone holding the entire Primordial Night in place. Few elements of Nightraign's lore prove as enigmatic as the cutting-gifted tribe, sometimes referred to in translations as the Stonecutter tribe. These mysterious people exist only in scattered references and cryptic item descriptions, yet their actions may have shaped the entire alternate timeline. Understanding who they were, what they knew, and what they attempted provides crucial context for comprehending how the Primordial Night came to reign supreme. The Primordial Nightlord's rune offers our primary source of information about this group. Its description states, "The cutting-gifted tribe anticipated the coming night, and spent many a moon planning its prevention, concluding that their only chance at success was to cheat a god. They had glimpsed what they should not, the very sin of the Erd Tree. For their trespass, so were they punished." Let us parse this dense passage piece by piece. First, the tribe possessed foreknowledge of the night's approach. They knew, somehow, that the eternal darkness would descend upon the world. This prescience suggests either advanced astronomical knowledge, mystical divination, or direct communication with entities aware of cosmic patterns. The Nox, who worshipped night and stars and awaited their prophesied Lord of Night, would certainly possess such knowledge. This connection makes the cutting-gifted tribe likely candidates for being either Nox themselves or closely allied with them. The term cutting-gifted has spawned considerable debate in the community. The most straightforward interpretation relates to the Erd Tree itself. In the base game, we learn that seeds or cuttings from the Erd Tree were once thought impossible, as the tree was believed perfect and eternal. Only after the shattering did Erd Tree seeds scatter across the land, giving rise to minor Erd Trees. Based on this, one interpretation suggests the cutting-gifted tribe were those who somehow obtained cuttings of the Erd Tree before this should have been possible, granted them as a special dispensation, or stolen through subterfuge. An alternate interpretation connects the term to the Fingerslayer blade, that weapon of the Nox capable of slaying the vassals of the Greater Will. This blade represents the ultimate expression of the Nox's rebellion against divine authority, a physical manifestation of their ability to cut ties with the outer god that subjugated them. If cutting gifted refers to those who possessed or created such blades, it would reinforce a potential connection to the Nox and their opposition to the Golden Order. Some theorists suggest cutting gifted may be a translation issue, with the original Japanese implying something closer to good for grafting or similar concepts. This would tie them to practices of physical alteration and combination, perhaps related to the ritual that created Heolstor as a patchwork of champions. Without access to definitive translation notes from Software, we cannot determine which interpretation most accurately reflects the intended meaning. What we know with certainty is that this tribe spent extensive time, many moons according to the description, planning how to prevent the Night's arrival. They were not passive observers of prophecy, but active opponents of what they foresaw. Their conclusion that they must cheat a god reveals the scale of the threat they perceived. Normal methods, conventional warfare, political maneuvering, all these approaches seemed insufficient. Only by somehow subverting divine power itself did they believe victory possible. But which god did they seek to cheat? The most obvious candidate is the Night itself, the outer god of darkness that would eventually claim dominion over their world. If they knew this entity approached, they might have attempted to outmaneuver it somehow, perhaps by creating conditions that would prevent its manifestation, or by establishing protections that could repel its influence. Their failure suggests either their methods proved insufficient, or the god they sought to cheat anticipated and countered their schemes. An alternative interpretation suggests they sought to cheat the greater will itself. If the Golden Order's structure somehow enabled or even necessitated the Knight's eventual arrival, undermining that structure might prevent the catastrophe. This would align with the next phrase describing how they glimpsed what they should not, the very sin of the Erd Tree. Discovering some fundamental flaw or deception at the heart of Marika's system might have led them to conclude that cheating the greater will was the only path to salvation. The nature of the Erd Tree's sin remains one of Elden Ring's most tantalizing mysteries. The base game hints at dark truths behind the Golden Order's radiant facade, secrets about death, the greater will's true nature, and Marika's own machinations. The cutting-gifted tribe somehow gained access to this forbidden knowledge. Perhaps they infiltrated sacred sites, or pieced together clues from ancient texts, or received revelation through mystical means. However they learned it, the knowledge of this sin informed their attempts to prevent the Night. That they were punished for this trespass seems inevitable, given From Software's narrative patterns. Those who reach too far, who glimpse truths meant to remain hidden, invariably suffer consequences in these games. The exact nature of their punishment is never stated explicitly, but circumstantial evidence suggests it may have been total annihilation. We find no living members of this tribe in Nightreign. Only their descendants exist, and even those descendants have been pulled from across time and space in fragmented form as the Nightfarers. The tribe's most enduring legacy is the ritual they performed to summon these Nightfarers. According to lore fragments, they performed a ceremony that called upon the minds of their descendants, drawing them to the Roundtable Hold to fight battles the tribe could not win. This represents an astonishing feat of metaphysical engineering, reaching forward through time to recruit warriors who would not be born for generations or even centuries. The ritual's success demonstrates the cutting-gifted tribe possessed extraordinary knowledge and power, even if ultimately insufficient to prevent the Night's arrival. This summoning raises questions about causality and determinism. Did the tribe always summon the Nightfarers as part of an inevitable timeline, or did their action create a new branch where those specific individuals came to exist? If the latter, are the Nightfarers fighting to restore a timeline that never was, or to create a future that becomes their past? The circular nature of such temporal paradoxes fits perfectly within From Software's approach to narrative, leaving players to wrestle with philosophical puzzles alongside mechanical challenges. The Nightfarers themselves arrive with fragmented memories, knowing only that they must oppose the Nightlords. This memory loss might be a natural consequence of being summoned across temporal distances, their personal histories scrambled or erased by the journey. Alternatively, it could represent deliberate action by the cutting-gifted tribe, stripping away potentially distracting personal attachments to focus these warriors entirely on their mission. A soldier with no memory of what they fight for cannot be swayed by appeals to old loyalties or threatened with harm to loved ones they do not remember. Each Nightfarer represents a potential descendant of the tribe, pulled from different times and possibly different realities. This would explain their varied origins and the fact they come from distinct eras and places. Wylder hails from a distant homeland across a sea of fog, while Guardian comes from the winged realm and embodies the values of the Knights of the Pinion Folk. Duchess has connections to nobility, while Raider appears to have been some form of arena fighter. Their diversity may reflect the tribe's original members, each Nightfarer descended from a different tribesperson and carrying some fragment of their ancestors' purpose. The mysterious cord end item provides another possible connection to the cutting-gifted tribe. Its description reads, "A carefully woven cord." This cord belonged to the young girls who were housed in a place that was meant as an eternal secret. The cutting-gifted tribe vowed to sacrifice their flesh while concealing the truth. This fragment reveals the tribe made blood sacrifices as part of their plans, possibly offering up the lives of their own children in desperate attempts to alter fate. The location mentioned, a place of eternal secrets housing young girls, might be related to Marika's shaman village or some similar hidden sanctuary. If the cutting-gifted tribe did sacrifice their children, it paints their efforts in even more tragic terms. They foresaw apocalypse and spared nothing in their attempts to prevent it. They offered their own flesh and blood, performed forbidden rituals, stole divine secrets, all in service of averting a future they knew would bring only darkness and despair. Their failure means those sacrifices were for nothing. Their children died without accomplishing the goal for which they were offered, and the night descended anyway. Or perhaps their efforts were not entirely in vain. The Nightfarers continue to fight, armed with knowledge and purpose instilled by the tribe's ritual. The Roundtable Hold still stands as a fortress against the darkness. The possibility of dawn remains, however remote. If the Nightfarers succeed in defeating Heolstor and breaking the cycle, it will be because the cutting-gifted tribe's preparations bore fruit, albeit generations later than they could have anticipated. The connection to the Nox becomes even more apparent when examining the tribe's opposition to the Night. The Nox worshipped Night and awaited their Lord of Night, believing this figure would bring prosperity and the Age of Stars. The cutting-gifted tribe, if they were Nox or related to them, represent a faction that broke from the mainstream faith. They recognized the Lord of Night would bring not salvation, but destruction. This internal division mirrors historical religious schisms, where original believers come to oppose the very forces they once revered after witnessing or foreseeing their true nature. The Fingerslayer blade becomes relevant again in this context. The Nox created this weapon to kill the Two Fingers, those vassals of the Greater Will that served as intermediaries with the Outer God. If the cutting-gifted tribe possessed such a blade, or the knowledge to create one, they might have believed they could use it against the Night as well. After all, if one can forge a weapon to slay the servants of one Outer God, why not create similar tools to combat another? Their attempt to cheat a god might have involved an upgraded or modified version of the Fingerslayer blade designed specifically to counter the Night. This theory gains support from the Silver Tier item that plays a role in Wylder's remembrance quest. Silver tears are creations of the Nox, artificial life forms with mimicry abilities. They can take the form of humans or serve as components in more complex alchemical processes. Wylder uses a silver tear to transform himself into a new Nightlord, replacing Heolstor after defeating him. This suggests the Nox's alchemical knowledge, preserved by their cutting-gifted descendants, provides tools capable of directly interfacing with the Knight's power structure. The tribe's fate serves as a warning about the dangers of opposing cosmic forces. Even with foreknowledge, advanced magic, and willingness to sacrifice everything, they could not prevent the Knight's arrival. Their punishment for glimpsing the Erd Tree's sin implies that some knowledge carries intrinsic danger, that there are truths which doom those who learn them regardless of how they respond to that knowledge. This reinforces themes present throughout From Software's work about the price of ambition and the futility of struggling against predetermined fate. Yet the tribe's story also demonstrates defiance in the face of impossible odds. They knew the night approached. They could have simply accepted this fate, prepared their people for survival under eternal darkness, or fled to distant lands beyond the coming shadow's reach. Instead, they chose to fight, to resist, to attempt the impossible even though they must have known their chances were slim. This same spirit of defiance lives on in the Nightfarers, those distant descendants carrying forward a battle their ancestors began. Limveld bears the scars of the Primordial Night's reign in every cliff face, every erosion, every impossible geographical feature. Once this land resembled Limgrave, that gentle starting area where countless Tarnished took their first stumbling steps into the lands between. Now it has become something simultaneously familiar and utterly alien, a twisted reflection of what was that forces players to relearn navigation through terrain they thought they knew. The most immediately obvious change is the coastline. Where Limgrave's borders gradually transition to other regions, Limveld features dramatic cliffs plunging directly into churning seas. Large portions of the original landmass have eroded entirely, calved away by the relentless action of waves and weather. Standing at these cliff edges and looking out over the water, one can see the stumps of former highlands jutting from the surf, suggesting how much geography has been lost to the ocean's hunger. This erosion appears far more advanced than normal geological processes could produce over centuries or even millennia. The Night's curse has accelerated natural decay. Rain falls constantly across Limveld, a ceaseless downpour that scours stone and washes away soil. This precipitation is no ordinary weather pattern, but a manifestation of the night itself, actively working to erase the land's history and geography. Buildings crumble faster, roads wash out, even the bedrock itself seems to wear away at unnatural rates. The Erd Tree's absence leaves a void in more than just the landscape. That massive tree served as a navigation landmark visible from anywhere in the lands between, its golden radiance providing both direction and comfort. In Limveld, players must navigate by other means, memorizing the positions of mountains and ruins, using the spectral hawk tree as their primary vertical marker. This tree, covered in glowing crystalline growths, provides perches where Nightfarers can summon spectral hawks that carry them along preset aerial routes across the region. The procedurally generated nature of Limveld fundamentally changes the exploration experience. While the overall geography, the mountains, valleys, lakes, and general terrain features remains consistent, the specific locations of key sites shifts with every expedition. Churches appear in different clearings. Forts materialize on alternate hilltops. Evergowls move to new positions. This constant reshuffling prevents players from ever fully mastering the map, forcing adaptation and improvisation rather than memorized routes. Shifting Earth events introduce even more dramatic variations. These large-scale modifications replace entire regions of Limveld with completely different terrain and challenges. One expedition might see a massive crater filled with lava flows dominating the southeast, while the next features a forest corrupted by scarlet rot in the same area. A third might find an enormous fort structure appearing in the southwest, with high walls and grand staircases surrounding a central water feature. Each shifting Earth event brings its own bosses, enemies, and unique rewards. The Scarlet Rot Forest houses Black Blade Kindred and offers the favor of the Forest Relic, which nullifies rot buildup and grants health regeneration. The crater provides access to powerful upgrades at its center, likely guarded by a significant boss. The fort presents a maze-like structure to navigate while fighting off its inhabitants. These events keep expeditions fresh and unpredictable, as no two journeys through Limveld feel identical. The underground tunnel system represents another major departure from Limgrave's geography. While the original region had a few cave entrances leading to minor areas, Limveld features an extensive network of tunnels winding through the bedrock. These passages connect different surface locations, providing both shortcuts and dangers. Miners and trolls inhabit these depths, the latter dropping valuable smithing stones when defeated. Navigating the tunnels requires careful attention to the night's tide, as getting trapped underground when the boundary contracts can prove fatal. Familiar landmarks appear in warped forms throughout Limveld. The ruins evoke Farum Azula, that ancient dragon city that exists outside time in the base game. How these structures reached Limveld remains unexplained, suggesting the Knight's influence has broken down temporal barriers, just as it has eroded spatial ones. Dead Leyndell soldiers can be found scattered across the region, their presence implying that Leyndell, the capital city, fell at some point in this timeline, its defenders fleeing or dying far from home. Stormvale Castle's central position in Limgrave finds an echo in Limveld's own central castle structure. This stronghold always appears at the region's heart, serving as a major landmark and challenge. Multiple approaches lead to its gates, and its interior contains several mini-bosses, including a particularly dangerous underground section. Clearing the castle provides significant rewards and unlocks access to upper areas where additional treasures await. The castle serves similar narrative purposes to Stormvale, representing civilization's attempt to maintain a foothold against chaos, though in this case, the chaos has nearly overwhelmed even this bastion. Key location types repeat across multiple expeditions with slight variations. Churches provide sacred seals and host enemy encounters, often featuring golem warrior giants. Great churches, larger versions with more enemies, offer even better rewards. Forts styled after Fort Hate contain mini-dungeons filled with mobs and mini-bosses, plus maps in their keeps, revealing nearby treasure locations. Sorcerer's Rises must be unsealed by breaking nearby protective barriers before entering to claim magic-focused equipment. Everguilds function similarly to their base game counterparts, but with a key difference. Instead of containing set bosses, these arenas house challenges that grow more difficult the later in an expedition they're opened. This scaling encourages early exploration to secure these fights when they're more manageable, or waiting until well-equipped if seeking greater challenge and reward. Unlocking an Evergall requires a Stone Sword key, making them optional but tempting objectives. Sites of Grace appear throughout Limveld, but transformed by the Knight's influence. The Golden Radiance has become Silver Gloom, reflecting the absence of the Greater Will's guidance. These pools of dim light still serve as rest stops, where Nightfarers can level up and purchase items from merchants who appear near many sites. The merchants themselves seem less like the cheerful peddlers of the lands between and more like desperate survivors, clinging to the last vestiges of commerce and civilization. The Wandering Mausoleum, that building that moved on 4 massive legs in the original game, appears in Limveld in static form. These structures allow players to replicate their gear, climbing legs to access the upper levels, where powerful effects can be applied to weapons and armor. The mausoleum's presence suggests certain traditions and technologies persisted even after the knight's arrival, though the animation of these buildings has ceased, another casualty of the changed world. Areas resembling Mistwood, Murkwater River, Lake Agheel, and Stormhill all exist within Limveld's geography. These parallels to Limgrave's subregions provide anchor points for veterans of the base game while still surprising them with differences. The lake might be larger or smaller than remembered, the woods denser or more sparse, the river flowing in a slightly different direction. This feeling of near familiarity proves more unsettling than complete novelty, a constant reminder that this is both the place we knew and something entirely other. Vertical traversal has expanded significantly. Where Limgrave was relatively flat with occasional cliffs and valleys, Limveld features much more pronounced elevation changes. Mountains tower higher, valleys plunge deeper, creating dramatic vistas and challenging navigation. Spirit Spring. Jumps scatter across the region, launching Nightfarers high into the air to reach distant platforms or cross gaps. Combined with the Spectral Hawk travel system, these vertical elements create a more three-dimensional exploration space than the original region offered. The Night's Tide itself transforms Limveld during each expedition. This boundary of violet flames and relentless rain gradually contracts as time passes, forcing players toward the center of the map. Stepping outside this boundary deals continuous damage, making it impossible to linger in safe areas once they've been claimed by the tide. This mechanic creates urgency and prevents players from grinding endlessly before boss encounters, ensuring each expedition maintains momentum toward its climactic confrontation. Random events punctuate exploration of Limveld. Meteors might strike the ground, creating craters with valuable loot and dangerous enemies at their centers. AI-controlled Nightfarers invade as hostile red phantoms, engaging players in combat for their carried runes. The Fell Omen, that recurring mini-boss, can appear without warning to harry an expedition. These unpredictable occurrences ensure players never feel completely safe, maintaining tension even during periods of relative quiet. The weather itself reflects the night's corruption. Beyond the constant rain, fog sometimes rolls in thick enough to reduce visibility to near zero. Lightning storms erupt with unusual frequency. The sky maintains a perpetual twilight, neither fully day nor completely night, as though the sun struggles against the darkness but cannot quite break through. This liminal lighting creates an atmosphere of unease, suggesting the world itself remains caught between states, unable to fully embrace either light or shadow. Limveld's flora and fauna show signs of mutation and decay. Trees grow twisted and gnarled. Grasses wither despite the abundant rainfall. Animals exhibit aggressive behavior and warped features, as though the night's influence has poisoned the very essence of life. The scarlet rot corruption that appears during certain shifting Earth events seems almost at home here, another form of decay layered atop the night's own corrupting influence. The absence of any equivalent to the Lands Between's grace guidance system forces players to navigate by map and landmarks alone. No golden rays point toward objectives. No shimmering paths guide players toward important locations. This lack of divine direction reinforces the theme of a world abandoned by the gods, where mortals must find their own way forward without supernatural assistance. It also increases the importance of careful planning and party coordination, as getting separated or lost in Limveld's maze of terrain can quickly lead to disaster. The Primordial Night does not reign through Heolstor alone. 8 powerful beings in total serve as rulers, with 7 Nightlords governing different aspects of the eternal darkness, before players face Heolstor himself as the 8th and final challenge. Each commands their own domain within Limveld and presents unique challenges to the Nightfarers who dare oppose them. These Nightlords represent the Night's multifaceted nature, from physical destruction to subtle corruption, from overwhelming might to insidious magic. Gladius, Beast of Night, stands as the first Nightlord most players encounter. This three-headed canine monstrosity combines savage physicality with flame-based attacks. Each of the three heads has a mind of its own, and during the fight, Gladius splits into 3 separate one-headed wolves, forcing players to track multiple targets simultaneously. His greatsword delivers devastating strikes, while fiery breath attacks threaten anyone who gets too close to any of his heads. Despite being the introductory Nightlord, Gladius demands respect and coordination, teaching players the fundamental mechanics they will need against more difficult bosses. Adel, Baron of Night, presents a draconic form with enormous jaws that dominate his silhouette. This beast stomps and charges around the arena, attempting to catch Nightfarers in his massive maw. His attacks cover wide areas, making positioning crucial for survival. Adel epitomizes raw physical power and territorial aggression, a lord who rules through overwhelming force rather than cunning. Players must learn his patterns and exploit brief openings between his relentless assault. Fulghor, Champion of Nightglow, wields power over magic and light distorted through the Night's lens. This Nightlord represents the corruption of Elden Ring's mystical traditions, taking the sorceries and incantations once used to maintain order and perverting them into weapons of darkness. His attacks come fast and unpredictable, requiring players to maintain constant awareness and react quickly to changing situations. Fulghor stands among the more challenging Nightlords, demanding skilled play and sharp reflexes. Noster, Wisdom of Night, embodies the intellectual aspect of darkness. Where other Nightlords rely on brute force or direct magic, Noster appears to strategize and plan. His moveset includes traps and area denial abilities that force players to continuously reposition. Fighting Noster feels like battling an intelligent opponent rather than a beast, each action calculated to maximize effectiveness. This cerebral approach makes him particularly dangerous for players who rely on pattern memorization, as he adapts and varies his tactics throughout the encounter. Maris, Fathom of Night, controls sleep and dreams, making her among the most insidious Nightlords. Her global sleep spell can incapacitate the entire party if not interrupted by dealing lightning damage at the right moment. This scripted weakness allows skilled players to turn the tide of battle by breaking her stance and canceling her most dangerous attack. However, letting Maris complete her spell likely means defeat, as sleeping Nightfarers are helpless against her follow-up assaults. She represents the danger of complacency and the importance of aggression at critical moments. Caligo, Miasma of Night, spreads corruption and poison. This Nightlord's very presence fouls the air, dealing passive damage through environmental effects. Status effect buildups accelerate near Caligo, forcing players to manage limited cures carefully while maintaining offensive pressure. The fight becomes a race against accumulated damage and afflictions, rewarding teams that can quickly end the encounter before debilitation overwhelms them. Caligo demonstrates how the Night corrupts on microscopic levels, rotting flesh and spirit alike. Libra, Creature of Night, offers one of the most unique encounters among the Nightlords. This entity will propose a deal before the fight begins, offering powerful weapons or other bonuses in exchange for accepting increased difficulty through unknown modifications. Players must decide whether the potential rewards justify the risk of fighting an empowered boss. This choice mirrors broader themes about bargaining with darkness and the costs of power. The fact that Libra is more difficult in cooperative play than solo adds another layer to the decision, as party composition affects the viability of accepting her deal. Each Nightlord resides in a spirit shelter accessed through a petrified tree. After surviving 2 nights in Limveld, Nightfarers enter ethereal sap that transports them to this realm. The spirit shelter serves as a preparation zone, offering merchants and brief respite before the final confrontation. Behind a massive stone door lies the Nightlords' arena, the actual battleground for the climactic encounter. The journey to each Nightlord follows this same structure, creating a ritual quality to these battles. The Nightlords possess distinct resistances and vulnerabilities, making team composition and weapon choice relevant to success. Studying each lord's strengths and weaknesses allows players to optimize their approach, bringing elemental damage types that exploit vulnerabilities while avoiding ineffective attacks. This strategic layer adds depth beyond pure execution skill, rewarding research and planning. Defeating 4 different Nightlords unlocks access to the Night Aspect Expedition, where Heolstor himself awaits. This progression system ensures players gain experience with multiple boss types and strategies before facing the ultimate challenge. It also allows players some choice in their path, as they can select which 4 Nightlords to defeat, potentially avoiding particularly difficult matchups if they struggle with certain mechanics. The Everdark Sovereign system introduces enhanced versions of each Nightlord available on weekly rotation. These souped-up encounters start at Phase 2 and progress to a new Phase 3, featuring upgraded movesets and significantly increased power. Defeating an Everdark Sovereign grants Sovereign Sigils, a special currency exchangeable for exclusive relics and rare items. This endgame content provides additional challenges for players who have mastered the base Nightlords. Some Nightlords feature special invasion events where they appear in different expeditions. Noster, Maris, and Libra all have confirmed cross-expedition appearances, granting unique passive bonuses when these surprise encounters are overcome. These invasions create memorable moments and reward players who successfully adapt to unexpected boss fights during their runs. The Nightlords' visual designs draw from various mythological and fantasy traditions while maintaining cohesive aesthetic unity. Each possesses a distinctive silhouette immediately recognizable even in the chaos of combat. Color schemes vary, with different Nightlords associated with particular hues, blues and purples for some, reds and oranges for others, blacks and grays for still others. This visual language helps communicate personality and expected abilities before any combat begins. Based on the lore available, one interpretation suggests the 8 Nightlords may be aspects of Heolstor himself, fragments of his power given independent form. Each could represent a different facet of night: terror, hunger, cunning, deception, corruption, and so forth. Under this reading, defeating a Nightlord might weaken Heolstor by reclaiming that aspect of his power. Alternatively, each Nightlord could be a separate entity that pledged allegiance to Heolstor or was subjugated by his might. The exact relationship between them remains deliberately ambiguous in the current lore. The weekly rotation of Everdark Sovereigns ensures the endgame content remains fresh. Players cannot simply memorize one fight and farm it indefinitely. Instead, they must maintain proficiency across all 8 encounters, as any Nightlord might receive the Sovereign treatment in a given week. This system encourages mastery of the entire boss roster, rather than specialization in defeating one particular foe. Some Nightlords have special mechanics beyond simple damage dealing. Libra's bargain system represents the most elaborate example, but others incorporate unique elements as well. These mechanical twists force players to adapt strategies to each fight rather than applying the same approaches universally. A tactic that works wonderfully against one Nightlord might prove completely ineffective against another, maintaining variety across the multiple expeditions required to reach Heolstor. The Nightlords serve narrative purposes as well as mechanical ones. They embody the Night's many faces, illustrating how comprehensive and multifaceted the darkness has become. No single approach or solution can counter all 8, mirroring how the cutting-gifted tribe found no silver bullet to prevent the Night's arrival. Only by developing diverse strategies and capabilities can the Nightfarers hope to overcome all these challenges. 8 warriors stand against the Primordial Night. These Nightfarers come from different places and times, summoned across vast distances by the cutting-gifted tribe's ancient ritual. Each carries their own story, their own motivations, their own tragedies. Though they have lost most of their memories during the journey to the Roundtable Hold, fragments return through expeditions and remembrances, slowly revealing who they were and why they fight. Wylder serves as the poster character for Nightreign, a young swordsman with balanced attributes suitable for learning the game's systems. He departed his faraway homeland across a sea of fog, driven by a single certainty buried beneath his clouded memories. He must track down the Nightlord and bury it. Clutched in his hand is a solitary earring, its counterpart long lost. This item proves crucial to his personal story, connecting him to the Duchess in ways neither initially understands. Wylder's tribe was massacred in some past catastrophe. He swore vengeance in their name, dedicating himself to ending the night that destroyed his people. As his remembrance progresses, he recovers memories of his sister, the Duchess, thought lost along with the rest of his clan. The reunion proves bittersweet, as completing his mission to defeat Heolstor would mean ending his sister's existence along with the Nightlord. The Iron Menial provides him with a silver tear as a solution, allowing Wylder to become the next Nightlord after Heolstor falls, ensuring his sister survives even as the current night ends. Guardian hails from the Winged Realm and served with the Knights of the Pinion Folk, embodying their values of protection and sacrifice. This armored warrior specializes in defense, capable of drawing enemy attention and shielding allies from harm. Guardian's past involves service to his nation and tragic losses that drove him to accept the summons to Limveld. His remembrance quest reveals connections to fallen comrades and difficult choices made in defense of others. Despite being one of the weaker Nightfarers in direct combat, Guardian's utility in team compositions makes him valuable for protecting squishier allies. Ironeye serves as the range specialist, providing precision damage and support from distance. This character's remembrance is among the trickiest, requiring defeat of Fulghor, one of the harder Nightlords, during its progression. Ironie's story involves themes of observation and distance, watching events unfold while struggling with the inability to directly intervene. The ranged combat style matches this narrative theme, fighting from afar rather than closing to melee distance. Ironie's ultimate art and abilities synergize with positioning and timing rather than raw damage. Raider embodies barbaric might, a warrior focused on devastating attacks and surprising resilience. This berserker-type character can withstand tremendous punishment while dishing out equally tremendous damage. Raider's fighter's resolve. Passive prevents being knocked down while using skills, allowing uninterrupted assaults even under pressure. His remembrance quests differ significantly from others, featuring solo gladiatorial combat in special arenas rather than expeditions into Limveld. These one-on-one duels against various bosses reveal his past as an arena fighter, someone who lived by violence and sought glory through single combat. Recluse takes the role of primary spellcaster, beginning with the highest focus points but lowest health pool. This fragile mage can unleash devastating magical assaults from a safe distance, but crumbles quickly if enemies close the gap. Recluse's story intertwines with the bone-like stone given to her by the Iron Menial, an item with power to expunge divine essence. Her remembrance explores themes of isolation and forbidden knowledge, someone who delved into lore better left buried and now struggles with the consequences. Her ultimate art and abilities revolve around magical damage and area control. Executor appears as a cloaked figure mourning the Erdtree's loss. This character remembers what came before more clearly than most Nightfarers, retaining fragments of the world as it once was. Paintings of the Erdtree feature prominently in Executor's story, relics of a golden age now past. His gameplay focuses on balanced offense and defense, with particular emphasis on holy damage, appropriate for someone seeking to restore what the Night destroyed. Executor has fewer remembrance quests than other Nightfarers, but those available involve meaningful exploration and combat challenges across Limveld. Duchess remains the most mysterious Nightfarer initially, as she must be unlocked rather than being available from the start. She serves as the priestess of the Roundtable Hold, welcoming other Nightfarers and guiding their efforts against the Night. Her true nature proves surprising, revealed through her remembrance quest to be something other than human. She was never alive in the conventional sense, inhabiting a doll body rather than flesh and blood. This revelation recontextualizes her role and relationship with Wylder, her brother, connected through means beyond simple familial bonds. Duchess's remembrance provides heavy lore implications about the nature of the Nightlords and the Night itself. Her connection to Wylder suggests the earring he carries once belonged to them both, a symbol of their bond that survived even when memories did not. The fact that defeating Heolstor would end her existence unless Wylder takes the Nightlord's place demonstrates the complex entanglement between the Nightfarers and the forces they oppose. Revenant rounds out the roster as another unlockable character discovered through specific conditions. This skeletal warrior wielding spirit summons represents death itself made manifest, a being that exists in the liminal space between life and endings. Revenant's abilities involve summoning spirit allies, 3 family members given new skeletal forms: Helen, a page, Frederick, a mad pumpkinhead, and Sebastian, a giant spirit skeleton. These summons provide unique tactical options, allowing Revenant to bring additional bodies into combat situations. Each Nightfarer can use any weapon found during expeditions, avoiding hard class restrictions. However, their base stat distributions favor certain playstyles. Wylder's balanced build suits melee weapons of all types. Guardian's high health and defense make him ideal for heavier armaments and tanking. Ironeye's dexterity orientation works well with bows and ranged weapons. Raider's strength allows him to wield the heaviest weapons effectively. Recluse's intelligence makes her the obvious choice for catalysts and spells. This flexibility within specialization allows players to adapt to the weapons they find while still maintaining each character's distinct identity. The Nightfarers level up during expeditions by spending runes at Sites of Grace, capping at level 15. This temporary progression resets between runs, enforcing the roguelike structure while still providing satisfying power growth within each expedition. Permanent progression comes through relics earned by defeating Nightlords and items purchased with Merc from the Roundtable Hold. This dual progression system balances short-term tactical growth with long-term strategic advancement. The Nightfarer's amnesia serves multiple narrative and mechanical purposes. It explains why players start each expedition with minimal abilities, despite these being legendary warriors. It creates mystery around each character's true identity and motivations, mysteries gradually revealed through remembrance quests. It also emphasizes the sacrifice involved in being summoned across time and space. These warriors gave up their very identities, to answer the call and fight for a world they no longer fully remember. The diversity of the Nightfarers reflects the cutting-gifted tribe's desperation and thoroughness. They could not predict which skills and perspectives would prove necessary against the night, so they cast their net widely, summoning warriors of different types from different backgrounds and eras. This shotgun approach to recruitment created a team with complementary abilities capable of adapting to varied threats. No single Nightfarer can defeat the night alone, but together they possess the tools necessary for victory. Memory defines identity. Without memory, who are we but empty vessels going through motions without understanding why? The Nightfarers arrive at the Roundtable Hold stripped of most recollections, knowing only that they must fight. Remembrances offer a path back to themselves, fragments of the past made playable, allowing these warriors to literally relive their own histories and reclaim lost portions of their souls. The Remembrance system represents From Software's most ambitious narrative experiment. Rather than delivering story through item descriptions and environmental details alone, Nightreign allows players to enter their characters' memories and experience key moments from their past directly. These flashbacks manifest as distinct gameplay sequences, sometimes taking place in the Roundtable Hold itself, other times occurring in special instances within Limveld, occasionally featuring entirely unique arenas designed specifically for that memory. Each Nightfarer has their own journal accessible in the Roundtable Hold's library. Initially, these journals contain only fragments, disconnected entries that hint at larger stories without revealing complete pictures. As players undertake expeditions with a specific character, they randomly find additional journal pages that unlock new chapters. These discoveries feel organic, memories returning unbidden during moments of stress or when encountering something that triggers recognition. To activate a remembrance, players interact with their journal and select a chapter marked Begin Remembrance. Reality shifts. The world takes on a hazy, dreamlike quality, indicated by white mist at the edges of vision. The character has entered their own memory, experiencing past events as though they are happening again in the present. NPCs from the memory appear and speak, providing context and assigning objectives. These missions vary enormously between Nightfarers, reflecting their diverse backgrounds and the different types of challenges they faced. Wylder's remembrance quest proves particularly intricate. He must find his sister's earring, matching it to the one he already carries. This leads him through interactions with the Iron Menial and other Nightfarers, gradually piecing together the truth about Duchess's identity. Later chapters involve retrieving specific items from Limveld and making choices about the nature of his vengeance. The final objective, defeating Heolstor while equipped with the Silver Tear relic, allows Wylder to transform into the next Nightlord, preserving his sister by taking the burden of maintaining the night upon himself. Raider's remembrance takes a completely different approach. Instead of exploration and item collection, his memories consist entirely of gladiatorial combat. Each chapter transports him to a coliseum where he must face bosses in one-on-one duels. These fights showcase his past as an arena champion, someone who earned glory and survival through single combat. The progression is straightforward. Win each duel to unlock the next chapter, culminating in Raider proving his worth through sheer martial prowess. This streamlined structure makes his remembrance the quickest to complete, fitting for a character whose history involves less intrigue and more straightforward violence. Ironeye's remembrance requires defeating Fulhor specifically during its progression, adding difficulty since this Nightlord ranks among the more challenging. The memory structure involves observation and precision, themes central to Ironeye's character. Players must carefully track targets, time attacks perfectly, and maintain awareness of changing conditions. The ranged combat focus carries through into the Remembrance objectives, reinforcing the connection between gameplay and narrative. Recluse's Remembrance delves into forbidden knowledge and the dangers of learning too much. Her story explores themes of isolation chosen in pursuit of understanding, the price of accessing secrets meant to remain hidden. The bone-like stone given to her by the Iron Menial becomes a focal point, this strange object with power to alter fate and expunge divine essence. Her memories may reveal how she came to possess knowledge of the night before its arrival. Given the cutting-gifted tribe's own pursuit of forbidden knowledge, some players have theorized a possible connection, though this remains interpretive. The final chapters involve confronting Heolstor and making choices about the nature of knowledge and power. Guardian's Remembrance focuses on protection and loss. His memories show companions fallen in past battles, oaths sworn to defend those who cannot defend themselves, and the weight of responsibility that comes with the role of protector. The objectives often involve safeguarding NPCs during expeditions or completing challenges without certain resources, mirroring the restrictions and difficulties he faced in life. His relatively weak combat capabilities make some of these challenges more difficult, but also more thematically appropriate, demonstrating how protection sometimes requires suffering disadvantage to keep others safe. Duchess's Remembrance reveals her inhuman nature and connection to the night itself. Learning she was never alive in the conventional sense, never born but created, reframes her entire existence. Her memories explore what it means to have identity without human origins, to exist as something between living and non-living, to serve a purpose assigned rather than chosen. The revelation that defeating Heolstor ends her existence unless Wylder intervenes creates tragic tension, pitting her desire to see the night ended against her own survival instinct. Executor's shorter Remembrance sequence focuses on his role as witness and rememberer. He retains clearer memories of the world before the night, making him uniquely positioned to mourn what was lost. His quest involves preserving knowledge and symbols of the past, particularly the Erd Tree itself. The paintings of the golden tree that feature in his story represent attempts to hold on to beauty and order that no longer exist except in memory and representation. Revenant's Remembrance explores his strange existence as an undead warrior with human emotions and memories. His family, transformed into spirit summons, retain traces of who they once were despite their current forms. The memories delve into his past life and the circumstances that led to his death and subsequent resurrection. The ability to summon his family members during combat takes on deeper meaning once players understand these are actual loved ones, bound to serve him even after death. Completing Remembrances provides tangible rewards beyond story revelations. Each character unlocks unique relics after finishing certain chapters, powerful items that grant significant passive bonuses or alter ability functionality. These relics become permanent additions to the player's collection, available for use in future expeditions. Some Remembrances also award new outfits, cosmetic changes that allow players to customize their Nightfarers' appearance while commemorating narrative progression. Most significantly, completing a Nightfarer's full Remembrance quest and then defeating Heolstor while playing as that character triggers a special ending sequence. These character-specific conclusions provide closure to individual stories while revealing additional lore about the night and the Nightfarers' true purposes. Wylder becomes the new Nightlord to save Duchess. Ironeye makes a different choice about the Primordial Nightlord's rune. Recluse's ending explores the relationship between knowledge and power in determining reality's structure. The Remembrance system solves a persistent challenge in roguelike game design: how to deliver meaningful narrative in a genre defined by repeated runs and permadeath. By tying story progression to character selection and successful expeditions rather than linear advancement, Nightreign ensures players organically experience backstory while pursuing mechanical improvement. Each run serves dual purposes, both honing skills against Nightlords and recovering memories that make those victories more satisfying narratively. The white haze indicating an active remembrance creates interesting multiplayer implications. Only one player's remembrance can be active per expedition, preventing conflicts where multiple party members are pursuing incompatible objectives. This limitation encourages either solo play for story-focused sessions or coordinated group efforts where one player's quest becomes the shared goal. It also means completing all remembrances requires multiple successful runs, extending playtime while maintaining engagement through narrative variety. The gradual revelation of backstory through remembrances mirrors the Nightfarers' own process of recovering their identities. Players and characters journey together toward understanding, both rediscovering who these warriors were before the summoning ritual stripped away their pasts. This parallelism creates powerful moments when a particularly significant memory returns, suddenly recontextualizing everything that came before with new understanding of motivations and relationships. The Roundtable Hold stands as the last bastion of resistance against the Primordial Night. This weathered structure, dilapidated and worn by ages of use, provides the only safe haven for Nightfarers in a world consumed by darkness. Here, warriors rest between expeditions, purchase equipment, and interact with the few souls who work alongside them against the encroaching night's tide. Unlike the Roundtable Hold from Elden Ring's main timeline, this version bears visible scars of abandonment and decay. Paint peels from walls, furniture shows age and wear. The once grand halls have a tired quality, as though the building itself grows weary of maintaining its vigil. Yet despite this deterioration, the Hold functions as sanctuary, a place the night cannot touch, where Nightfarers gather strength for their next attempt against the Nightlords. The priestess welcomes all who arrive at the Hold, her voice tinged with an accent that shifts between vaguely British, French, and Russian tones. She explains the Nightfarers' purpose, informing them of the Nightlords they must defeat and the expeditions they must undertake. As players progress, they discover her true identity. She is Duchess, one of the Nightfarers, though her role as priestess seems to transcend her identity as an individual warrior. This dual nature, serving simultaneously as guide and combatant, reflects the desperate circumstances that require everyone to fulfill multiple roles. The Iron Menial inhabits the Hold as well, a mysterious figure who assists the Nightfarers in various ways. He provides Recluse with the bone-like stone, offers Wylder the silver tear needed to become the next Nightlord, and seems to possess knowledge beyond what his station should grant. Some descriptions suggest the Iron Menial received items from the Nightlord himself in dreams, implying a connection to the night that goes unexplained. Whether he serves as willing ally, unwilling servant, or something more ambiguous remains open to interpretation. The small jar bazaar operates as the Hold's merchant, offering various items for purchase with merc, the currency earned through successful expeditions. Emotes, relic rites, additional relics, and other useful goods fill his inventory. The presence of a merchant in a place ostensibly cut off from the outside world raises questions about supply chains and commerce in this dying timeline. Where do these goods come from? Who produces them? The answers likely involve the night's reality warping effects, allowing connections to places and times that should remain inaccessible. The journal stands in the library area, allowing Nightfarers to access their remembrances. This massive tome records each warrior's story, presenting it in chapter form, with new entries appearing as memories return. The act of reading the journal to trigger remembrances emphasizes the literary, story-focused nature of this game mode. Players are not just fighting bosses, but literally reading and experiencing stories, transforming from warriors into scholars of their own forgotten pasts. The dresser allows cosmetic customization, enabling players to change their Nightfarers' appearance by equipping unlocked outfits. This feature unlocks after defeating the second Nightlord, providing a sense of progression and reward for early successes. While cosmetic changes do not affect gameplay directly, they allow personal expression and commemoration of completed remembrances, as many skins are earned through those story quests. The Table of Lost Grace serves as the expedition launching point. Here, players select which Nightlord they wish to challenge, determining the expedition type and final boss. Multiple expeditions can be queued simultaneously, adding extra challenge for those seeking it. The table also displays which expeditions have been completed and which Nightlords remain undefeated, tracking progress toward the unlocking of the night aspect and the final confrontation with Heolstor. Relic pedestals scatter throughout the hold, allowing players to equip up to 3 relics at once. These powerful items grant significant bonuses to attributes, damage from specific sources, or unique abilities. Managing relic loadouts forms a key part of preparation for each expedition, as different Nightlords and expedition types may call for different combinations of bonuses. The strategic depth of relic selection rewards players who experiment with various builds and approaches. A training room provides space to practice combat without the pressure of an actual expedition. Here, Nightfarers can test weapons, practice timing on their abilities, and generally familiarize themselves with mechanics in a safe environment. For a game demanding precise execution during high-stakes boss fights, this training space offers valuable opportunity to hone skills. The atmosphere of the Roundtable Hold reflects the broader narrative themes. This is a place barely holding together, staffed by the desperate and the determined, serving as final defense against overwhelming darkness. The Hold's survival depends entirely on the Nightfarers' success. Should they fail repeatedly, should the night eventually overwhelm them, this last sanctuary would fall, and with it, any hope of resisting the eternal darkness. The relationship between the Hold and Limveld remains ambiguous. Does the Hold exist within Limveld, or is it a separate pocket dimension accessible from that region? Can the night's tide reach the Hold, or does it remain forever beyond the darkness's grasp? The loading screens and transitions between Hold and Expedition suggest dimensional travel of some sort, implying the Hold exists outside normal geography in a protected space maintained by powers unexplained. This brings us to the night's tide itself, perhaps the most defining mechanical and narrative element of Nightreign's experience. This boundary of violet flames and ceaseless rain spreads across Limveld during each expedition, gradually contracting to force players toward specific areas. Standing outside the tide inflicts continuous damage, making it impossible to remain in safe zones once they've been consumed by darkness. The tide serves as both time limit and narrative metaphor, the night's encroachment made literal as a physical barrier that swallows more of the world with each passing moment. The 3-day structure of expeditions coincides with the tide's behavior. Each in-game day lasts approximately 15 to 20 real-world minutes, depending on player efficiency. During daylight hours, the tide remains at the map's edges, allowing relatively free exploration. As night approaches, the boundary begins contracting. By the time darkness fully falls, a ring of blue flames has formed, channeling players toward a central area where the night's boss awaits. These night bosses, different from the final Nightlords, serve as checkpoints, testing player readiness for continued exploration. Defeating the first night's boss allows progression to Day 2. Surviving the second night's boss grants access to the Spirit Shelter and the path to the Nightlord. Failing at any stage ends the expedition, returning Nightfarers to the Roundtable Hold to attempt again with lessons learned from their defeat. The tide creates constant pressure and urgency. Players cannot grind indefinitely in safe areas, accumulating power before challenges. Instead, they must balance exploration and combat efficiency with the ever-present need to keep moving toward objectives. This design prevents stagnation while maintaining the tension essential to Nightraign's atmosphere. The knowledge that the tide approaches, that time runs short, that soon there will be nowhere left to hide. These factors ensure players never become too comfortable during expeditions. The visual design of the tide reinforces its threatening nature. The violet flames create a wall of color and movement impossible to ignore. The rain falling within becomes visible through lighting and particle effects, emphasizing the deluge constantly working to erode Limveld. Sound design contributes as well, with the roar of flames and patter of rain increasing in volume as the boundary draws near. All senses combine to communicate danger approaching, demanding attention and action. The tide's gradual contraction, rather than sudden appearance, gives players agency in choosing when to engage with its pressure. Efficient teams can complete objectives before the tide becomes a major concern, while slower or more cautious groups find themselves racing the encroaching boundary. This variable pressure, based on performance, creates natural difficulty scaling, challenging strong players while providing more time for those struggling. The spirit shelter accessed after the second night represents a threshold between ordinary Limveld and the Nightlord's domain. This ethereal space bears resemblance to the eternal cities, with alien architecture and an otherworldly atmosphere. Here, players make final preparations, purchasing items and ensuring equipment is optimal before facing the ultimate challenge. The spirit shelter exists as liminal space, neither fully Limveld nor fully the Nightlord's realm, a transitional area emphasizing the enormity of the step players are about to take. The massive stone door leading to the Nightlord adds ritualistic weight to each encounter. This is not simply stumbling across a boss, but deliberately choosing to confront cosmic evil in its home territory. The door emphasizes player agency. You are here because you chose to be, because you completed the journey, and now must see it through. Opening that door and stepping into the Nightlord's arena marks the point of no return, where success means progressing to the next expedition, and failure means starting over with knowledge gained, but progress lost. When the centipede demon from Dark Souls emerged in Nightraign's reveal trailer, the gaming community erupted with speculation. This appearance, along with the Nameless King and Duke's dear Freya, suggested something unprecedented. From Software might be connecting their different franchises into a shared multiverse. The implications are staggering, potentially recontextualizing years of lore across multiple games. The centipede demon first appeared in Dark Souls as a boss in the Demon Ruins, a creature of magma and chaos embodying the demonic energies of lost Izalith. Its return in Nightraign comes with updated mechanics adapted for cooperative combat, but visually and thematically, it remains recognizably the same entity. Even its original soundtrack accompanies the fight, leaving no doubt this is meant to be the actual centipede demon rather than mere homage or reference. The Nameless King, one of Dark Souls 3's most challenging optional bosses, similarly makes an appearance. This exiled son of Gwyn, Lord of Sunlight, once ruled over dragons before being stricken from history for his betrayal. His presence in Limveld raises profound questions. How can a being from Dark Souls' universe exist in Elden Rings? Are these separate timelines of the same multiverse, or has the Nightlord's power to breach reality brought beings from completely different worlds? Dukes. Dear Freya from Dark Souls. 2 completes the trilogy representation. This two-headed spider boss guarded the Duke's archives and served as guardian to various treasures. Like the others, Freya appears with updated mechanics but recognizable identity. Her original soundtrack plays during the encounter, cementing the connection to her previous appearance. The lore explanation provided within Nightreign states that Heolstor can cleave open rifts in the sky, drawing champions and monsters from other worlds to serve the knight's purposes. These rifts reveal glimpses of different realms, their skyboxes visible through the tiers in reality. This ability to summon across dimensional boundaries explains how Dark Souls bosses can appear in Elden Ring's universe, though it raises further questions about the nature of these worlds and the spaces between them. Director Junya Ishizaki confirmed that he received permission from other From Software directors, Hidetaka Miyazaki and Yutaka Tanemura, to use these bosses in Nightreign. The deliberate, approved nature of their inclusion suggests this is not simple asset reuse for convenience, but something more significant. From Software rarely makes such choices without narrative purpose, implying genuine lore connections exist between these franchises. The Dark Souls Twitter account referred to these returning bosses as remnants of a fire that once burned bright, using language that evokes the central metaphor of Dark Souls' first flame. This fire, which sustained the Age of Fire and staved off the Age of Dark across 3 games, represents the fundamental cycle of light and darkness in that series. The description suggests these beings survived the eventual fading of the fire and now persist as echoes or memories of a world that once was. George R. Martin's offhand comment from 2021 takes on new significance in this context. When discussing his involvement with Elden Ring, Martin referred to it as a sequel to Dark Souls. At the time, fans dismissed this as misunderstanding or miscommunication, but perhaps Martin spoke more literally than anyone realized. If Elden Ring exists in the same multiverse as Dark Souls, separated only by dimensional barriers rather than being completely unrelated universes, his comment becomes accurate in unexpected ways. The Erd Tree's visual similarity to Dark Souls' Archtrees gains potential meaning as well. Throughout Dark Souls, enormous Archtrees dot the landscape, with the Great Hollow containing several massive specimens. These trees seem to anchor reality in some fashion, with their roots plunging deep into the earth. The Erd Tree follows similar design language while serving analogous narrative purposes as a cosmic anchor and source of fundamental power. Are these parallel developments, or do they represent the same underlying force manifesting in different worlds? The Moonlight Greatsword, From Software's signature weapon appearing across nearly all their titles, becomes a potential link between universes. Heolstor wields a version channeling night rather than moonlight, while Ranni's consort receives the Dark Moon Greatsword in Elden Ring proper. In Dark Souls, various versions appear associated with magic and moonlight sorcery. If these are all the same blade moving between worlds, or variants of a single original weapon, they could serve as plot threads connecting otherwise separate narratives. The concept of outer gods gains new dimensions when considered across franchises. Dark Souls features entities like the Abyss, the Chaos Flame, and various other cosmic forces that shape reality. Elden Ring introduces the Greater Will, the Frenzied Flame, the Formless Mother, and others. Bloodborne has its Great Ones. If these games share a multiverse, are these all different names for the same entities, or do multiple outer gods exist across various dimensional planes, each ruling their own sphere of influence? The failure of light in both narratives creates thematic parallels. Dark Souls chronicles the fading of the first flame and the struggle to maintain the Age of Fire against inevitable darkness. Nightreign shows a world where the Golden Order's light failed completely, replaced by eternal night. Both scenarios involve cosmic decay and the end of ages defined by light, suggesting similar underlying patterns govern their universes, even if the specifics differ. The presence of Leyndell soldiers' corpses in Limveld takes on additional meaning if cross-dimensional travel is possible. These warriors might have fallen defending against incursions from other worlds, or perhaps they were pulled through rifts during the night's chaotic restructuring of reality. The appearance of ruins resembling Farum Azula similarly suggests boundaries between places and times have become permeable in ways they should not be. Asset reuse represents a practical consideration that cannot be ignored when analyzing these connections. From Software has limited resources and tight development schedules like any studio. Reusing proven boss designs with tweaked mechanics provides efficient content creation while delivering familiar favorites to fans. The Dark Souls bosses might be purely gameplay inclusions without deeper lore significance, chosen for their memorability and mechanical suitability rather than narrative importance. However, From Software's track record suggests they rarely make such choices without at least considering lore implications. Even when recycling content, they typically provide in-universe explanations. The conscious decision to include original soundtracks and obtain permission from other directors implies intentionality beyond mere convenience. These bosses were selected deliberately, their appearances approved through proper channels, suggesting there could be planned narrative purpose rather than arbitrary inclusion. Whether this represents genuine multiverse connections or simply respectful homage remains a topic of community debate until From Software provides clearer statements. The community remains divided on interpretation. Some embrace the multiverse theory, excited by the prospect of connected narratives spanning decades of games. They construct elaborate theories about how different franchises might link, mapping timelines and drawing connections between events across titles. Others remain skeptical, arguing From Software would not undermine the integrity of separate fictional universes for what amounts to an experimental spin-off title. They interpret the Dark Souls bosses as gameplay elements without deeper meaning, fun references rather than lore revelations. Both perspectives have merit. Until From Software releases explicit statements or additional games that confirm or deny the multiverse theory, definitive answers remain elusive. This ambiguity itself feels very much in keeping with From Software's narrative philosophy, where mysteries often remain unsolved and players must draw their own conclusions from incomplete evidence. For purposes of understanding Nightreign specifically, the important element is that Heolstor can summon beings from other worlds. Whether those worlds are Dark Souls' universe or merely other dimensions within Elden Ring's multiverse becomes almost secondary to the fact that he possesses such power. This ability establishes him as a threat operating on cosmic scale, capable of reaching across the boundaries that normally keep realities separate. Such power marks him as uniquely dangerous, even among the Knight's servants. The Nameless King's appearance proves particularly interesting, given his lore in Dark Souls 3. He was erased from history for allying with dragons against the gods, becoming nameless as punishment. Heolstor is also called Nameless in his Japanese name, both being figures stripped of identity or whose true names have been forgotten. This parallel suggests thematic connections even if direct narrative links remain unclear. The possibility of future crossovers or expanded multiverse content has the community speculating wildly. Could Bloodborne's beasts appear in future DLC? Might Sekiro's shinobi join as playable Nightfarers? Could we see bosses from Demon Souls or King's Field making appearances? From Software has opened a door that, once ajar, becomes difficult to close. Even if Nightreign represents a one-time experiment, the precedent now exists for cross-franchise content in ways previously unimaginable. Every expedition through Limveld, ultimately leads to one of several conclusions. The Dawn ending, character-specific endings for Wylder, Ironeye, and Recluse, and the implications of the post-credits sequence all contribute to understanding what breaking the Primordial Night cycle truly means. These endings, while cryptic in typical From Software fashion, provide crucial insights into the nature of the night and the possibility of restoration. The standard Dawn ending occurs when players defeat Heolstor and return to the Roundtable Hold with the Primordial Nightlord's rune. A mysterious corpse lies at the entry point of the expeditions, shriveled and ancient. Touching this figure and offering the rune triggers a transformation. The corpse destroys the rune, unbinding its power and undoing the Primordial Night's intervention. The Lands Between returns to its post-shattering state, setting the stage for the events of the original Elden Ring to potentially unfold. The Nightfarer who completed this action begins dissolving into strands of grace, golden light streaming from their form. These strands swirl through the Roundtable Hold, passing each familiar location one final time before rising through the open roof toward the sky. The visual suggests the Nightfarers' purpose has been fulfilled, their existence in this timeline no longer necessary once the night has been dispelled. They return to the grace that summoned them, merging back into the cosmic forces that enabled their heroic intervention. Outside, the world transforms. The ashen waters and darkened skies give way to daylight. Color returns to a landscape that had been rendered in shades of gray and purple for so long. Most significantly, a new Erd tree begins to grow, its spectral light glowing faintly as it takes root. This Erd tree appears different from the golden original, suggesting either a new iteration of the world tree or a transformed version adapted to post-night conditions. The sight of this tree rising provides concrete hope that the world can recover from the devastation the Primordial Night inflicted. The post-credits sequence adds complexity to this seemingly hopeful ending. The screen cuts to darkness, then reveals an enormous tree-like being standing in an ocean, its form silhouetted against twilight sky. A strand of grace lands upon this entity, and it turns away from the Lands Between, departing across the waves. The narration states, "The Elden Ring's attempt to prevent succession to Marika has failed." This cryptic scene has generated multiple interpretations within the community. Some theorize the tree being is a Nightfarer transformed by their sacrifice, their essence merged with the Erd tree's growth to carry its seed to new lands. Others suggest this represents the night itself, finally departing after failing to permanently claim the world. The phrase about preventing succession to Marika could imply the entire Primordial Night was the Elden Ring's own desperate attempt to maintain status quo, stopping anyone from claiming Marika's position and potentially ushering in new ages. If we follow this interpretation, the night was not an invasion from without, but a defensive measure from within. The Elden Ring, perhaps acting on residual programming or compulsion from the greater will, tried to freeze the world in eternal darkness rather than allow the succession of ages. The cutting-gifted tribe may have glimpsed this truth, the sin of the Erd tree being that the entire system was designed to prevent change through any means necessary, even apocalyptic ones. Their attempts to cheat this god might have involved trying to circumvent these fail-safes. However, this remains one possible reading among several viable interpretations of the available lore. Wylder's secret ending diverges significantly from the Dawn conclusion. After defeating Heolstor while equipped with the Silver Tear relic and having completed his remembrance quest, Wylder approaches the fallen Nightlord on the shore outside the Roundtable Hold. Rather than offering the rune to the corpse, he uses the Silver Tear to transform himself into the next Nightlord. His soul takes Heolstor's place, ensuring the night continues, and thus preventing the Roundtable Hold's dissolution and Duchess's death. This sacrifice mirrors classic tragic narratives where heroes must become what they fought against to save those they love. Wylder exchanges his humanity and freedom for his sister's survival, knowing he will be bound to maintain the night for potentially all eternity. The Roundtable Hold is reformed anew, preparing for a new night with Wylder as its Nightlord. The twin horses, symbols of Wylder and Duchess's bond, will never run free together again, but perhaps one can gallop onward while the other endures imprisonment in darkness. This ending raises thought-provoking questions about the Nightlords themselves. One could interpret this as suggesting Heolstor was once someone like Wylder, a hero who made a terrible choice to save another. This reading would imply all Nightlords might be former heroes transformed by the Silver Tier's power, creating an endless cycle of warriors becoming the very darkness they opposed. The description of Heolstor as a patchwork of champions could support this interpretation, potentially representing not fusion of many beings, but accumulation across iterations, each new Nightlord adding their essence to the Gestalt entity. However, these remain speculative connections drawn from thematic parallels rather than explicit lore confirmations. Ironeye's unique ending involves choosing to kill the corpse rather than offering it the rune. This violent rejection of the standard resolution suggests Ironeye sees some flaw in simply undoing the knight's intervention. Perhaps he recognizes that returning to the post-shattering state merely resets conditions that led to the knight's arrival in the first place. By killing the corpse and keeping the rune, Ironeye might attempt to forge a different path, one that breaks the cycle entirely rather than perpetuating it. Recluse's ending explores themes of knowledge and power in determining reality's structure. Her connection to the bone-like stone, an object capable of expunging divine essence, provides her unique perspective on the knight's nature. Her ending likely involves using this knowledge to fundamentally alter the cosmic forces at play, rather than simply defeating them. The specifics remain deliberately vague, inviting player interpretation about what she accomplishes and what price she pays for her choice. Each character's specific ending requires defeating Heolstor while playing that particular Nightfarer after completing their remembrance. This requirement ensures players have full context for understanding why each character makes their unique choice. Wylder's ending only makes sense after learning about Duchess and their relationship. Ironeye's decision carries weight only after understanding his perspective from his memories. Recluse's actions require comprehension of her insights into forbidden lore. The structure of multiple endings reflects From Software's design philosophy that player choice matters even in predetermined narratives. While the broad strokes of the story remain fixed, the specifics of how that story concludes vary based on decisions made during gameplay. These endings explore different possibilities and consequences, acknowledging that no single resolution perfectly addresses all moral and practical considerations. The Dawn ending represents hope for restoration, but also cyclicality. Returning to the post-shattering state means the Tarnished might still arrive, grace might still guide them, and events from the original Elden Ring could still unfold. But it also means all the conflict and suffering that defined that timeline becomes possible again. The night has been dispelled, but the problems that made it possible might remain unaddressed. Wylder's ending represents sacrifice and love, choosing personal damnation to save another. It shows the Primordial Night need not be evil incarnate, but can be maintained by good people forced into impossible positions. Yet it also suggests the cycle will continue, that future Nightfarers will face the same Nightlord threat, that darkness will endure even if its nature has changed. Ironeye's ending represents rejection and revolution, refusing offered solutions in search of something genuinely new. It demonstrates that sometimes breaking a cycle requires violence and destruction rather than resolution and restoration. Yet it also risks leaving the world without direction. The old order destroyed, but no clear replacement established. Recluse's ending represents knowledge as power, using understanding of fundamental forces to reshape reality itself. It shows that enlightenment might provide tools for genuine transformation beyond simple victory or defeat. Yet it also acknowledges that such knowledge carries danger, that wielding power on this scale might corrupt even noble intentions. These varied conclusions transform Nightreign from simple boss rush into meditation on cycles, sacrifice, and the difficulty of achieving lasting change. No ending is purely positive. Each comes with costs and compromises, forcing players to consider which imperfect solution best addresses the problems the Primordial Night represents. This moral complexity elevates the narrative beyond simple good versus evil into something richer and more thought-provoking. For all that Nightreign reveals about its alternate timeline, crucial questions remain unanswered. These gaps in knowledge, whether deliberate or awaiting explanation in future DLC, have spawned countless community theories and debates. Understanding what we do not know proves just as important as analyzing what we do. Is Heolstor truly Ranni's consort from a timeline where the Age of Stars went wrong? The evidence seems compelling. The Dark Moon Greatsword, or something remarkably similar, the association with night and darkness, the role as a lord over a new age. Yet direct confirmation never appears. Heolstor is called nameless, suggesting his original identity has been erased or forgotten. Could this erasure be deliberate, hiding the truth about his past to prevent something, or perhaps to protect someone? The reference to him being a patchwork of champions complicates any single identity theory. If Heolstor contains aspects of multiple warriors, he might not be any one person at all, but rather an amalgamation. This could mean he's composed of every potential tarnished who could have become Ranni's consort across infinite timelines, or every hero who tried and failed to stop the night, or every Nightlord who ever existed fused into one terrible entity. How did Radahn's fate differ in this timeline? In the original Elden Ring, Radahn holds back the stars themselves through gravity magic, preventing fate from moving forward. His eventual defeat and death release the stars, allowing events like Ranni's Age of Stars ending to proceed. In Nightreign's timeline, the stars clearly moved freely enough for the night to descend. Did Radahn never gain his power over the stars? Did he die earlier? Or did someone find a way to break his cosmic grip without killing him? The absence of any mention of Radahn, Malenia, Miquella, or the other demigods raises questions about their roles in this timeline. We know the shattering occurred, implying these figures existed and fought over the Great Runes. But what became of them after the night arrived? Did they perish fighting the darkness? Did some escape to distant lands? Do they serve the Nightlords now, twisted into servants of the very power that destroyed their world? What exactly is the sin of the Erd Tree that the cutting-gifted tribe glimpsed? This tantalizing phrase suggests a fundamental flaw or deception at the heart of the Golden Order. Theories abound. Perhaps the Erd Tree was always meant to prevent succession, as the post-credits narration suggests. Maybe it was created through some terrible sacrifice that has corrupted everything since. Could it be related to Marika's own origins as a shaman from the Land of Shadow, some dark secret about how she ascended to godhood? The connection between the cutting-gifted tribe and the Nox remains suggestive but unconfirmed. The tribe clearly possessed advanced knowledge about the night's coming and the means to perform sophisticated temporal summoning rituals. The Nox worshipped night and possessed the Fingerslayer blade, capable of killing the vassals of the Greater Will. These parallels suggest a possible connection, though we lack definitive proof. They could represent the same people, different factions of the same culture, or completely separate groups with convergent goals driven by similar circumstances. The Cord End item description mentions young girls housed in a place meant as eternal secret, where the cutting gifted tribe vowed to sacrifice their flesh while concealing truth. This location has never been found in-game, leading to speculation about hidden areas or content reserved for future DLC. The girls mentioned might be related to Marika's shaman village or represent something entirely separate. Until this location is discovered, if it exists to be discovered, the full story of the Cutting Gifted tribe's sacrifices remains incomplete. The bone-like stone given to Recluse holds significance beyond its gameplay effects. This object with distinct lifelessness connects to the outer god of night and possesses power to expunge divine essence, while also being vulnerable to destruction by that same essence. How was such an item created? Why did the Iron Menial receive it from the Nightlord in a dream? What does it mean that some objects exist simultaneously as weapon and weakness, able to destroy gods, but also able to be destroyed by them? The Greater Will's apparent absence from Nightraign's timeline invites speculation about Outer God's limitations and vulnerabilities. If a single divergent event allowed a different Outer God to supplant the Greater Will's dominance, what does this reveal about the cosmic hierarchy? Are Outer Gods in constant competition, with control shifting based on circumstances? Does the Greater Will still exist somewhere in this timeline, simply unable to intervene? Or was it genuinely destroyed or driven out by the Night's arrival? The appearance of Dark Souls bosses through rifts Heolstor creates suggests his power extends across dimensional boundaries. But where do these boundaries lead? If to Dark Souls' universe, what implications does this have for both games' cosmologies? If to other dimensions within Elden Ring's multiverse, what other worlds exist parallel to the Lands Between and Limveld? Could there be timelines where different outcomes occurred, where Mog's dynasty succeeded, where Miquella's plans came to fruition, where Godfrey never became Elden Lord? The tree being that departs in the post-credits sequence remains one of the ending's most mysterious elements. Its silhouette suggests humanoid form merged with plant matter, walking on what might be legs or roots. The strand of grace landing upon it and bringing it to life implies connection to the Golden Order, yet it turns away from the Lands Between rather than toward it. Is this a Nightfarer transformed? A fragment of the Erd Tree itself given independent existence? Some entity connected to the Cutting Gifted tribe's plans? The statement that the Elden Ring's attempt to prevent succession to Marika has failed raises enormous questions about agency and intent. Does the Elden Ring itself possess will and consciousness? Can it act independently of the Greater Will, or whoever currently wields it? If the entire Primordial Night was the Elden Ring's doing, attempting to freeze the world rather than allow new ages to begin, what does this say about the nature of order and the objects that embody it? Marika's role in Nightraign's timeline remains largely unexplored. We know she shattered the Elden Ring, causing the shattering that serves as the divergence point. But what happened to her afterward in this timeline? In the base game, she is imprisoned within the Erd Tree for her transgression. In Nightraign, the Erd Tree itself is absent. Does this mean Marika was never imprisoned, or that she was but later freed or died? The lack of any mention of her fate suggests either she perished when the night arrived, or she exists somewhere beyond our current access. The relationship between time and the Nightfarers' summoning creates paradoxes worth considering. If the Cutting Gifted tribe performed the ritual in the distant past, before the night arrived, how did they summon descendants from the future? Does this mean they were always going to fail, since the descendants they summoned exist in a timeline where the night has already reigned for ages? Or does the act of summoning itself create the future from which those Nightfarers come? A self-fulfilling temporal loop? The procedural nature of Limveld and the shifting Earth events might reflect more than just gameplay variety. Could the constant changes represent a timeline that has not fully stabilized? Reality itself might be in flux, unable to settle into a single definite configuration, because the Night's influence has broken down the normal rules that govern cosmic order. This instability could be both symptom of and contributor to the world's degraded state. The fact that dead Leyndell soldiers appear in Limveld suggests the capital fell at some point in this timeline's history. Was it destroyed by the Night? Did it collapse from within after the Golden Order's failure? Did some demigod claim it briefly before the Night swept all away? The presence of these corpses far from where Leyndell should be implies either they were fighting desperate battles across the realm, or Limveld's geography has shuffled locations that were once distant. The purpose of the iron menial receiving items from the Nightlord in dreams warrants investigation. Is he unwittingly serving Heolstor's purposes by distributing these objects? Or might the Nightlord have reasons to want certain Nightfarers equipped with specific tools? The bone-like stone's power to expunge divine essence could be double-edged, useful against the Night, but also potentially useful to the Night against remnants of the Golden Order. Future DLC will likely address some of these questions while inevitably raising new ones. From Software's DLC typically expands understanding of base game lore while introducing complications and layers that deepen mysteries. New Nightfarers might appear with their own stories, shedding light on different aspects of the world's history. New Nightlords could represent additional facets of the Night or reveal more about the 8 already present. New areas might include the cutting-gifted tribe's hidden places or regions of Limveld not yet accessible. The Primordial Night stands as one of From Software's most ambitious narrative experiments. Through Nightreign, they have constructed an entire alternate timeline, a world where familiar elements recombine into something both recognizable and alien. This parallel reality serves multiple purposes, providing fresh gameplay experiences, exploring what-if scenarios from the base game's lore, and examining themes of cycles, sacrifice, and the difficulty of achieving genuine change. What makes the Primordial Night particularly fascinating is how it recontextualizes our understanding of Elden Ring's main timeline. By showing us what happens when the Tarnished never return, when grace does not guide champions toward restoration, we gain appreciation for how precarious the balance was in the original game. The Golden Order's stability, always portrayed as illusory and fragile, proves even more tenuous than we realized. A single divergence, the Night arriving instead of grace returning, transforms everything. The connection to themes of succession and stagnation resonates throughout. The post-credits narration stating the Elden Ring attempted to prevent succession to Marika suggests the entire conflict stems from cosmic forces trying to maintain unchanging order. The Greater Will, or the Elden Ring itself, or some combination of divine powers sought to freeze the world rather than allow ages to progress naturally. The Primordial Night might represent what happens when a system's failsafes activate, when the universe itself tries to stop time's march forward. This reading transforms the Night from simple malevolent force into something more complex, the cost of stagnation made manifest. When order refuses to give way to new possibilities, when succession is prevented at all costs, the result is darkness without end. The Night becomes both punishment and prison, locking the world into eternal twilight where nothing can grow or change. It is order taken to its logical extreme, the ultimate preservation through complete cessation. The cutting-gifted tribe's role as prophets and resistors highlights the tension between fate and free will that runs through all From Software games. They saw the future, knew the Night would come, and try desperately to change that destiny. Their failure raises the question of whether any action can truly alter predetermined outcomes, or whether all struggles merely fulfill prophecies in ways we cannot anticipate. Yet their preparations created the Nightfarers, offering hope generations after the tribe's own destruction. Perhaps their defiance mattered not in preventing the night, but in ensuring resistance would endure. The Nightfarers themselves embody themes of identity and purpose. Stripped of memories yet fighting toward goals they barely understand, they demonstrate that heroism need not rest on clear understanding or certain knowledge. One can fight for worthy causes, even without remembering why those causes matter. The gradual recovery of memories through remembrances parallels humanity's own struggle to understand our place in larger patterns, piecing together meaning from fragments of experience. Heolstor's tragedy, if the theory about him being Ranni's consort holds true, shows how even the noblest intentions can corrupt when exposed to cosmic forces beyond mortal comprehension. The quest to free the world from divine oppression instead opened doors to different oppression, trading one form of darkness for another. This warns against assuming any single change will solve systemic problems, reminding us that revolution can devour its own children, and that freedom from one power does not guarantee liberation overall. The multiple endings reflect From Software's mature approach to moral complexity. No ending is purely triumphant. Dawn requires sacrifice and returns to conditions that enabled the night. Wylder's choice saves his sister, but perpetuates darkness. Ironeye's violence destroys without clear plan for what comes after. Recluse's knowledge risks consequences unknown. These imperfect resolutions force players to consider which flawed outcome they prefer, acknowledging that real choices rarely offer clean victories. The procedural nature of Limveld and the roguelike structure create interesting parallels with the narrative themes. Each expedition is a cycle, with progress lost upon failure and permanent advancement coming slowly through accumulated knowledge and resources. This mirrors the broader cosmic cycles the lore explores, ages rising and falling, darkness and light trading dominance. The player's repeated attempts to defeat the Nightlords echo the universe's own cycles on a smaller, more personal scale. The inclusion of Dark Souls bosses, whether understood as multiverse connections or clever references, demonstrates From Software's confidence in their mythology's strength. They can bring elements from previous games into new contexts without those elements feeling out of place. The decades of world-building across multiple franchises have created flexible frameworks that can accommodate crossovers while maintaining narrative coherence. This suggests potential for future interconnections as the company continues developing games. Nightreign's commercial and critical success, with 5 million units sold despite its departure from traditional Soulsborne formula, indicates appetite for From Software experimenting with established properties. The roguelike structure, character-driven narrative, and cooperative focus represent significant changes from the single-player, open-world formula that defined Elden Ring. Yet the core elements that make From Software games distinctive remain: challenging combat, cryptic lore, atmospheric world-building, and that particular blend of despair and determination that characterizes their narratives. The Primordial Night ultimately reveals that Elden Ring's world contains depths we have only begun to plumb. The main game presented one possible resolution to the Shattering's chaos, but infinite other timelines exist, where different choices led to different outcomes. Nightreign explores perhaps the darkest of these alternatives, where hope nearly died entirely, but for the efforts of 8 heroes pulled from across time to fight battles their ancestors could not win. As we await future DLC and potential sequels, the questions raised by the Primordial Night will continue to fuel community speculation and discussion. What other timelines might exist? What other outcomes might we explore? How deep does From Software's multiverse extend, and what surprises await in its hidden corners? These questions ensure Nightraign's impact will resonate long after players have defeated Heolstor and experienced all available endings. The Primordial Night teaches us that darkness can be more than simple evil. It can represent stagnation, the cost of refusing change, the weight of systems designed to perpetuate themselves eternally. It shows us that even cosmic forces have limits and vulnerabilities, that outer gods can be challenged and sometimes defeated. Most importantly, it demonstrates that defiance matters even when victory seems impossible, that fighting against overwhelming darkness has value regardless of whether that fight ultimately succeeds. For those brave enough to undertake expeditions into Limveld, to challenge the 8 Nightlords and ultimately confront Heolstor himself, the Primordial Night offers both challenge and revelation. It asks difficult questions about fate and free will, about the cost of order versus the price of chaos, about whether breaking cycles truly changes anything or simply begins new cycles we cannot yet see. These are questions worth wrestling with, puzzles worth solving, mysteries worth exploring. The night may reign eternal in this timeline, but the Nightfarers fight on. And in their resistance, in their refusal to surrender to darkness, despite losing everything, including their own identities, we find something worth celebrating. Perhaps this is From Software's ultimate message, that the struggle itself matters, that defiance in the face of certain doom carries meaning, that even in a world consumed by shadow, the light of human determination can still flicker and glow. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the lore of the Primordial Night and Elden Ring Nightreign, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more explorations of video game mythology and storytelling. The worlds From Software creates are rich with secrets and meanings waiting to be uncovered, and we'll continue unraveling these mysteries together. Until next time, may your expeditions be successful and your understanding grow deeper with each venture into the dark.